Go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab. This is episode 107, and this week we're going deep. Let me tell you what. That's a really awkward intro. Just for you. We have episode this week. We're going to be doing just like we normally do when we have a going deep episode. We're going to be focusing on a specific hero. This week is Zarya, and special guest this week joining us is Grandmaster player CANAS1AN. What's up, Can?
Hello.
Or should I call you
clarify,
Can? I don't know.
Can. Oh no, I hope that doesn't catch on. But just CANAS1AN is my preferred online handle.
Right on. We got Andres coming in. Georgia. What's up, Andres?
What's up? A few hiccups tonight. Windows decided to make my life a little hard with all the updates, resetting everything. But we are here, managed to make it through.
Yep, and I'm coming in from a nice spicy morning in Japan, nice and humid after a nice long rain. This week is the rainy season's kind of kicking off in full swing. But this week, guys, Zarya. So we're going to be breaking it down. CANAS1AN and I were talking a lot in the pre-show while Andres was trying to fix some things. So I'm really excited for talking a lot about kind of micro decisions, macro decisions with this hero, and then kind of just like overall how to learn the hero. We are revisiting a past one. And the reason is Zarya was one of our first 3 heroes we actually did way back when with a little bit of help from our good friend Matt, aka Fat Cake, back in the Discord way back then. But man, has things changed, and Zarya is back in full swing in the meta, so no other good time like the present. Let's get it to know you a little bit, CANAS1AN, before we kind of go through sponsors and all that jazz. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my online is CANAS1AN because I am Canadian Asian, and I was a Grandmaster Zarya player for a very long time, not so much as of late, just because I'm a little bit burnt out on Overwatch, but I still regularly do VOD reviews of Zarya gameplay and trying to help people improve with her. I always answer questions if people, manage to find me around, and I've been expanding to Orisa as well, because I think she's a very good main tank. Whenever people locked in Zarya, I'm like, well, I got to play something else, and I was playing Orisa. So Orisa, Zarya are kind of my specialities in terms of helping people improve. But to clarify, just at the beginning, I was Grandmaster for a very long time, but I haven't been in a while just because I have not really been playing.
Sounds good. You want to talk about kind of like what your repertoire is on your YouTube page and what kind of you're known for there?
Yeah, so my YouTube, I have a ton of Zarya guides. I have about 10 or 11 right now, going in depth with like a bunch of different aspects of her play, basic guide, advanced guide, the most common mistakes I see with her with all the Zarya footage I watch, a Graviton guide. I talk about the different Zarya play styles. I have like tons of Zarya VOD reviews of all different skill tiers and platforms, bronze to top 500, Xbox, PlayStation, PC. If people send it to me, chances are I will get around to reviewing it. And then all that's sort of same thing with Orisa. I just put out my Orisa guide a few weeks ago. And I did that as one guide instead of like 11 Zarya guides. So I just like made one Orisa guide because I know I don't want people to like jump around. So yeah, kind of the same thing, and just so much, knowledge on there about, what you can do to be better with those heroes.
Very cool. I definitely recommend everyone to go check those out. They're super in depth. I want to ask you though, what made you pick Zarya? Why does you like her so much?
So it's actually a funny story. When I first, got Overwatch 2 years ago, I was playing Zarya and I was like, this person is not fun at all. And back then, her beam attack, it didn't have like a high tick rate, so you could constantly like have it on someone and not deal damage. It was really like unrewarding. So I just like didn't play Zarya for like 6 months because like, oh, she's useless.
Mm-hmm.
And then, DPS is always picked. I didn't really find support fun. I like playing tanks in a lot of the games I play because you don't die instantly, and you can't play the game when you're dead. And Zarya, to me, she had a decent health pool, kind of interesting mechanics, and instant 200 HP with her personal shield. And then the first time I really like saved a teammate, that would have absolutely died without me, and then we like won the game because I saved that teammate. To me, it just like clicked. I'm like, this is the best thing Overwatch has to offer for me, and I just, played and played and played and like, I don't want to say I perfected that style, but I constantly honed that style. And now the way what I call the selfless style is I just go around enabling as many people as I can so that you can win the game as a team instead of like one person carrying.
And it's funny enough, through enabling people, you become also really strong. That's part of her kit. So it's funny how that works.
Exactly. And I feel like there's a big disconnect in those things that you see a lot of players forget about. But yeah, so when you help your teammates, you also get stronger. But a lot of people don't, or they play in such a way that doesn't seem like they realize that.
And we'll get
Yeah, for
into all
sure.
of that in just a little bit, into the intricacies of how to play Zarya to her best potential.
Yeah, so let's get to a little bit of housekeeping. You guys are probably wondering when the game night is if you haven't been with us the last couple weeks, but typically, again, always say this, game nights are last Friday of every month in the Omnic Lab Discord. This month is June 29. You can kind of just jump in regardless of your time zone. It's going for a really long time, so if you're on the basically EU side all the way over, it's going to be quite a bit longer for the start time for you, but you might even get a head start on it if you show up at the time that works for you. You can basically start things early afternoon on Friday, about 2 a.m. or sorry, 2 p.m. in the East Coast time. Pretty much any time after that, people are kind of just coming in and out, trying to get something going. Then things kind of hit full swing around 6 to 8 p.m. and then they keep going and going and going. So if you want to do that, it's a great place to learn. We got players from Masters and Grandmasters all the way down to bronze and silver players, just consistently playing together and learning different styles of play. It's a really interesting mashup, having a lot of overlap. Masters and Grandmasters players have to start adjusting to different expectations of their teammates, and the bronze and silver players have to not get completely demolished. So it's a really interesting dichotomy where a lot of teaching is going on and a lot of learning, and I really enjoy it. And I'm sure that our community would back me up on that because they keep coming back. So you guys want to know about another sponsor for our show? We have Top Score Solutions. Ben, aka I Need Peeling, in our Discord is offering free business consulting in esports. If you're wanting to be a coach, or you want to start a team, develop an app or a service, you want to boost your subscriber base, you want to work in esports, any of these things, you can visit his website at topscoresolutions.com. You can reach out to him in the Discord with his tag, or you can find him on Twitter with Topscore Esports. Ben has got a master's in sports management, and now he just finished another one in finance and data and analytics. So he's got even more things that he can help you guys with. He's got lots of experience in sales, marketing, and company development. And the best part about our sponsor is that his services are free as long as the demand stays the way it is. But with anything that is good, the more the demand comes in, the more you have to start realizing it's time to get paid. So jump on it before it gets to be that way. And I know that Andres and I have been taking advantage of Ben's services, and it's been a lot of fun still doing coaching with my team. And I think I can't speak to what Andres has been doing because he hasn't really told me, but we definitely talk with Ben a lot in there, and his Discord is popping.
The Discord is pretty cool. That's what I've been a part of the most. Just being there. I've talked to a few people in there. Just interesting guys from all over the place. Some people are artists. Some people want to get into coaching or want to be professional players. They just want to do something to do with the scene, and they're just finding ways to connect with other people. So there's content creators, all different kinds. And Ben does a really cool thing. He kind of creates a network where it's easy to find other people that might complement whatever you're doing or are in the same vein, so you can connect with them and make things a little easier. It's a cool place to be.
Absolutely. If you guys want to check out our other partner, we have Omnic Meta, aka Switch. He just released on the 31st a Hanzo Ana Brigitte changes analysis. That's a mouthful, but it's basically since the last patch launched, what's been going on, what's been played, what's the stats. This is a really, really cool thing. I actually haven't gotten a chance to really dive deep in here. I've kind of just skimmed the article, but the first thing that you're going to see is the stat changes per minute on eliminations and damage done for Hanzo. And then you can go to see armor provided by Brigitte is actually starting to take quite a big hit, and her stun assist as well, because of the overall time that you have with them now. You have to wait a whole second. Darn, you have to wait another second for that stun, guys. And then there's some really interesting things with Ana, basically showcasing that she's still missing a little bit more punch than what they were predicting was going to happen. So anyways, that's just kind of a broad brush. You definitely want to go check that out if you're curious on those heroes and how the meta has been shifting. And don't forget that Owl Recap is now on its own Twitch channel. Anders, you want to speak to that real quick?
That's right. Owl Recap is now on its own channel. You can go to it to twitch.tv/Owl Recap if you're a fan of the league and want to keep up with everything that is happening. We have interviews with some of the casters, some of the coaches, and analysts, whoever we can get our hands on. And we're always talking about the league, reviewing the games, talking about the results after every week. This is the last week of the stage games. So we're about to go into playoffs and then into the grand final. I'm a little bit sad because there's going to be no more Overwatch League to watch during the week. But again, I'm going to have a lot of free time to do other projects. So a little bit bittersweet over there.
A little optimistic for interviews, am I right?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, well, that's enough about us. Let's get back into going deep on Zarya. So, CANAS1AN, you can take this however you'd like to start it. Whatever you think. You've done a lot more VOD reviews on this and breakdowns over the course. We have a little bit of the show notes. If you guys have this open on your phone or on your computer, you can pull it up and check out some of the Zarya reference guide that I pulled from the wiki page. But basically, we're going to kind of start with something to do with the role Zarya fills and kind of just the big broad brush, and then we're going to start getting into more of the nuance. So take us away.
Yeah, so Zarya, in my opinion, she is a jack of all trades. She can support, she can do DPS, and then she can be a tank. On one hand, her barrier abilities, both of them can protect your team, right? You can body block with personal shield, or you can save or assist an ally with projected barriers. So that's kind of a support element to her. Now, her DPS element, obviously, when you get energy as Zarya, your damage just goes through the roof, and you can melt, pretty much anyone in your path as long as the laser beam can reach them. And then in terms of the tanking elements, the fact that she does deal so much damage at a pretty medium range, that is a sense how she creates space. And she's not so much as a space creator as she enables her main tank to create space, right? When your Reinhardt is pushing in, right? She controls the space around Reinhardt so Reinhardt can do his job. Kind of the same thing with Orisa. If you have an Orisa and they're like pushing through on like Orisa's flanks, Zarya should be near Orisa and be like, hey, you're gonna get this close to me, I'm gonna melt you. And so that's why I think she can do kind of a little bit of every single role. She technically excels at the DPS role when she's supercharged. But at the same time, if you play with just that DPS mindset, chances are you're probably not going to live very long.
Very cool. I like that you make the differentiation of her being a tank that helps thrive that main tank, right? That Reinhardt and that Orisa. Do you want to speak a little bit to that? Why can't Zarya fill in that main tank role? Even though she is in the tank category, she has a big health pool. She can regenerate her shields, but she still needs that big shield hero with her, right?
Yeah, so main tanks are mostly classified by their ability to protect, 3 or more players at a time and, kind of slowly move in or defend a position. So when you have like a hero like Reinhardt, a hero like Orisa, they both create space and protect their teams in different ways, but they're providing a natural cover with their shields. Now their shields have, Reinhardt's shield duration is dependent on the enemy team's focus on a shield, or same with Orisa, but Zarya's barriers, her max duration is only 2 seconds. And even if you Zarya and like stood next to a teammate, bubbled both of you so it was protecting everyone behind you, that would only last 2 seconds. Like you're not gonna really make it that far, which is why you need a hero like Reinhardt or Orisa in order to, especially if you're attacking, like move in, or if you're defending to stop them from moving instantly into you. So like I know a long time ago, like Zarya Roadhog was like a thing. I really hated Zarya Roadhog because there's no main tank and there was just no space creation or retention with that lineup. Like you have the threat of the Roadhog hook and you have the threat of Zarya's laser beam, but really like there's nothing stopping the enemy team from just rolling all over you.
Totally. The way I see Zarya, like you said, is an enabler for that tank or that main tank to create that space, but she's not a hero in particular that can create the space herself. Sometimes she can do a pseudo creating space when she's very charged and she just basically makes everyone around her move away. but she doesn't have the protectiveness that can enable your Zenyatta or your McCree or any of your supports to follow you and stand with you on the point for a while.
Exactly.
You talked about the selfless style, and I like that word. Let's talk a little bit about that because it seems that that's kind of the style that you've been developing with Zarya, and there's different ways to play heroes, but I like the way that you worded that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the selfless style?
Yes, I could talk about this for a very long time. So I made a video a while ago called Zarya's play styles, and there's one style which I call the selfish style, and I want to be very clear. There's no negative connotation with the word selfish. It's just the
Mm-hmm.
definition, right? That
Right.
player, that Zarya player, is playing to enable themselves. And then the other style is the opposite of that, the selfless style, where you are more focused on enabling your teammates, either with assisting them making a play or saving their life when the enemy team makes a play. And those are really the two veins of Zarya playstyle in a generic sense. Maybe that you could get more nitty gritty, but pretty much any Zarya player would kind of fall into one of these two aspects. Now, I think the best Zarya players can kind of phase between the two at will, but I don't think that's that common. So the selfish style is you want energy, you want high charge all the time, and you will use your barriers to accomplish that no matter the circumstance. Like if a fight's currently happening, you will just like throw a barrier out there hoping it catches damage. Maybe it will definitely blocks damage, maybe it just blocks some trash damage like Junkrat spam, and then you'll be energized in order to try and carry this next fight. Right, you had 100 charge, you maybe could build up a Graviton, and you're just going to dish out a ton of damage. Now the selfless style is this, like you said, the style that I prefer, a style that I'm biased towards, and that I definitely worked very hard to excel at, is a style where you can keep up your energy with smart personal shield usage. Right, every barrier gives 40 energy, and the decay rate of energy, because this is important, is 2 energy per second. So her personal shield's got a 10-second cooldown. If you get 40 energy and then you wait 10 whole seconds, you will have lost 20 energy. So you can consistently gain 20 each time. So in a perfect situation, you would do 2 personals and then 1 projected, and you should be at 100 energy because you go from 40 to 20, then you'll get another personal be at 60, and you'll drop back to 40, and then I'm sorry, you'll be at 80 after the project barrier. But in a perfect world, you only need about 3 to 4 barriers max if you have smart barrier usage to get that max energy. So
As
when
long
you're
as you're
playing your
getting all of the energy, like the max
Right,
40
as long
energy
as you're,
per barrier.
being smart with it, right?
Right.
And that was the number one mistake I see when I do VOD reviews is players, they use their barriers before they see damage. They're kind of using it expecting the damage instead of reacting to it. If you want energy, no matter your playstyle, you have to make sure that the enemy team is dumping damage actively towards whatever you are shielding. That's how
Mm-hmm.
you get energy. Because if you're a selfish Zarya player that's throwing out barriers for energy, and I've recently been kind of calling it, you're playing blind, like you're blindfolded when you press the button. Like you're not going to get energy that way. Maybe you will sometimes, but not consistently, and then your energy is going to suffer. You'll have wasted resources with your barriers, and potentially your team will suffer because of that.
Right. And
Something that
go
I
ahead,
wanted
Rob.
to highlight on this was that this is actually a really big deal with lower tier play where I'm at, and how I was trying to learn the hero recently, and not that I wasn't aware of this, but something I was noticing as I had people in my skill bracket playing Zarya improperly is that they'll give you the barrier and then you go in and the barrier's gone. The barrier only lasts for 2 seconds, folks, regardless if it's on you or the enemy or your ally. So what you want to do is you almost like, I think this is a good time. We're about to go in. I'm going to give it to them. And then when you have that thought, kind of hold back about 2 seconds and then give it to them, because that's about how long it'll take before the shield dissipates and that somebody sees the shield and they don't shoot it. What happens with having the shield on the hero when they're taking damage is that the shield itself is absorbing damage they're currently taking, and then by the time that they are able to react to it and lift their finger off of the mouse key or retract their last shot, especially if it's a projectile, it's already into the barrier. So even from when they're trying to slow down damage after seeing the barrier and when the barrier pops, they're taking all of the damage into the barrier and thus giving you charge and giving you value from blocking that damage that goes into that hero.
Yeah, exactly. And especially main tanks are a big kind of target for barriers. main tanks, they have a large health pool. They are built to take a hit. So as Zarya, if you're, really wanting to enable your main tank, or just even if you're Reinhardt literally just running into the point without his shield, he can take some damage and then you can react to that and shield him. So you will maybe he went from 500 HP to 300 HP and then you shielded him, and maybe he'll complain like, oh, I lost 200 HP before you shielded me. But at the same time, if you shield them when he's at 500, no one will shoot that barrier. You'll either A, have not protected him from anything, you'll have wasted your cooldown, and you won't have any charge, which means you have less damage, which means you're not going to get a Graviton. Like, it's okay for your main tank to take a hit, and then you can react to that accordingly. And which is a major point is turn on your allied HP bars, don't play Zarya without your allied HP bars. It makes it so much harder to have good decision making with your barriers.
Absolutely. It's all about having a purpose to your barriers, right? That rather than just thinking, oh, my barrier is off of cooldown, let me just throw it out there and hopefully I'll catch some energy. It's more about being very purposeful with the times that you use it, right? Like you see your Reinhardt drop the shield to do a shockwave, or you see him charging in and they're about to start shooting at him. You see your Mercy maybe got cut off, and she's flying towards your team, but everyone's shooting at her. Like these moments where your teammates are gonna take damage, maybe even critical damage if you can be aware enough, and using the shield in those times to get the energy right.
Exactly.
So,
This-
CANAS1AN, can you talk to us a little bit more about the self barrier? Because this is something that I found is one of the more difficult mechanics to use that isn't as intuitive as if I'm about to die, I'll use this. You know what I mean? Like, how do I start actually building my charge with this and playing around my team with the positioning in order to maximize this ability?
Yeah, so personal shield usage is obviously very, very important to maintaining your energy as Zarya while holding on to that her best ability, her projected barrier. So, like we were saying, right, smart barrier usage reacting to enemy damage, that applies to Zarya as well, right? If they have a Reinhardt, they have a Hondo, they have a projectile hero, you can just stare them down, and one of you is gonna break. Either you, the Zarya player, are gonna use your barrier first, and then they're not gonna hit your shield, or you're gonna wait for them to fire damage at you, whether, like I said, a projectile, etc. And then you'll have there's distance there, hopefully, that you're not right in their face, and you can react to that. Use the personal shield and get your energy. Then for the next 10 seconds, you play, pretty safe, pretty reserved. Don't be running straight at them, and then you'll have your shield back again. Assess the situation. Are you guys in a poke phase? Are they still dumping free damage at you? Boom, another personal shield. Boom, you're at like 50, 40, 60 energy, somewhere in that ballpark. It's all about patience and using the visual and audio cues of Overwatch in order to help you make better decision making with your personal shield.
Now, I like the question about Rob. Let's talk a little bit about the positioning of Zarya, because this is something that a lot of players get wrong, me myself included. Um, because in order to maximize your shields, you have to be able to target your team, right? You have to be able to answer quick enough, be in range to be able to put the shield on your teammates, whether it's your main tank or whether it's on yourself. If your shield runs out, hopefully you're not caught in the open without any shield yourself. So you have to be very aware of your positioning as Zarya. Do you have any tips for where you like being in the battlefield?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, your main tank is the first person to interact with the enemy team. They're the farthest forward, and the second person there should be Zarya. And then DPS, depending on who it is, their position kind of be all over the place. But your supports are usually kind of behind Zarya. So in that perfect situation, Zarya is in a position to, she's staring at your main tank. You can give him or you can give them a shield reacting to what's happening. And if something's happening behind you, you can 180 and shield them. And there's no line of sight, like no teammates accidentally like wandering in front of you, absorbing that shield. And that happens to everyone, and it sucks. But
Mm-hmm.
when you kind of want to be in that pocket, in that sweet spot between the main tank and the supports.
Right. Much like a Lucio, sometimes you're kind of like the center of the formation. You're like
Exactly.
the heart, the core, the glue that keeps everyone together. Your front line
Keeps
and your
them
back
together
line.
and alive.
And
Yes.
alive, yes. Now, how do you manage usually keeping the front line and the back line alive, right? Because it's two different locations, and sometimes they're doing slightly different things, like your front line might be defending, but then your back line is getting flanked. So you have to be very aware of what is happening on both sides. Do you have any tips on how to kind of like keep track of what's going on?
Yeah, so the number one thing I want to say here is that you can't save everyone, which is just the harsh reality. I wish you could. I wish I had 5 projected barriers that would just constantly refill, but unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, and you only get one of them. So, in terms of teammate priority, for me personally, is healers first, then your main tank, then your DPS. DPS usually have mobility. They can kind of find their own way to a health pack. Your main tank has a large HP pool, and if your healers are alive, your healers can help them. Even if your main tank dies, right? Mercy is very popular. You can just bubble Mercy, and then she can res the main tank. But if your healer dies and it's not Mercy, there's no bringing that person back. So healers are squishy. They don't have the most tools to defend themselves. Maybe not so much recently with like the additions of Moira and Brigitte, but for the most part, a lot of the healers they need the attention of their team in order to survive and be effective in a fight. And that's where Zarya kind of swoops in at the last moment with either damage, body blocking with a personal shield, a projected barrier. You save them, your healer will thank you, and as Zarya, if your healer saves you, thank them. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Right,
Everyone
right.
kind of help each other. And like I said, healers are the top of my list on who I need to protect.
And
Real
you can always feel it in a match where there's a really good Zarya, whether it's in the enemy team or on your team. In the enemy team, when you're at DPS, you feel that Zarya because every time you're gonna get a kill, the shield just pops out of nowhere and just doesn't allow you to get it.
Yeah.
Or when you're on your team, you think you're about to die, impending doom is coming, you got hooked by Roadhog, and all of a sudden never mind, you're alive, standing in front of the enemy team, nothing is happening, and you realize your Zarya has been keeping an eye on you the whole time. Feels pretty good.
Yeah, again, that's the Selfless style. It's my absolute favorite. I've had Roadhogs in all chat say they hate me because I would just
you
constantly
deny them
just like
damage.
deny them. Like once they upped his cooldown to 8 seconds, it was over for any Zarya for Roadhog if you had a Zarya that was paying attention, right? You just like sit there, you hear him lumbering around, you're like, hang on a second, my out of position DPS is gonna get hooked, and you just like sitting there waiting for them to make that mistake, and then bam, shield, and you're like, oh look, 40 energy, and you're alive, win-win.
Now,
I was going to ask you a little bit more about the barriers because there's something that we haven't really touched on just yet is what else the barriers actually do. They don't just block damage, they don't just enable Zarya, but they actually can clear debuffs. And a lot of players that kind of in my game aren't really aware of this. But you want to speak to that and then also maybe like how you want to maintain using your barriers in order to deny the enemy those debuffs.
yeah, maybe some alternative uses for the barriers.
Right.
Yeah, so there are only some debuffs that Zarya's barriers cleanse. Discord Orb is kind of a big one. It's kind of hard to decide whenever that's worth it because the Zenyatta can just put the Discord right back
Right.
depending on who it is. But the main one that you can cleanse is Anna's anti-healing debuff. You can cleanse that, and that one's actually really important. So if you see, if you're aware the enemy Anna is good with our bionic grenades, and if she lands it on 4 people, again, as Zarya can only save 1 person. But if she like main tanks constantly get anti-naded,
Yeah, Reinhardt's
anti-healed,
especially.
and what you can do as Zarya is you can bait out that aggression. If yours Reinhardt gets anti-naded, kind of signals to the other team like go in on their Reinhardt. He can't be healed. You can react to that as Zarya. You can both cleanse the debuff, block damage, and your Reinhardt will be healthy as ever if your healers are paying attention. Now the Zarya barrier does not cleanse the hack; it just protects them. It can't break the hat. Now you were talking about alternative uses with her barriers. Her barriers act as line of sight blockers, so you can block Earth Shatter with Zarya barriers. You can block Diva Bomb with Zarya barrier. Kind of anything along those lines. If there's a barrier between you and that line of sight ability, everything behind you will be protected.
Right. They have a barrier centric property. So
Yes.
regardless of what is happening and how much damage is incoming, as long as the single source of damage is equal or greater than the barrier, they basically function as the barrier breaks. So if you take 1,000 damage from the Diva Bomb and you only have a 200 shield barrier, it just means the barrier is broken. It doesn't mean you're going to take damage all of the leftover damage from the 1000,
Right.
which is 800. You're not going to take that. It just means the rest of it is going to shatter the barrier. Works the same with
Correct.
Reinhardt and Orisa Shield, and of course Winston's barrier, which is
Yep.
the really fun hero plays that you might be seeing on those Reddit highlight reels where Winston's are diving clear across the map and dropping a barrier on a diva bomb.
Absolutely.
More alternative. Oh, sorry. One more alternative use with Zarya's Barrier. It's kind of one that's slowly emerging. I don't know how like practical it is, but you can technically, as Zarya, you can shield yourself or a teammate and face tank an enemy Zenyatta. And technically, in that sphere of influence behind the barrier, the person will not be receiving healing from the Transcendence. It's
Oh,
very
Wow.
interesting.
situational, but it is a mechanic
It
of
could
her
happen
shields.
kind
So
of
like you
like
can
a
body
body
block him.
block. Yeah, kind of like a body
Right.
block
So
thing.
yeah, so like it's the most you would see it is kind of like in a graviton, but at the same time, like there's just so many bodies, it's not that practical.
Mm-hmm.
But
Hmm.
if someone can master that, I would love to see that.
It probably gets in the way, right? You mitigate some damage no matter what.
Yeah, there
Mm-hmm.
was a fight in the Overwatch League where either on purpose or not, Zarya was in Zenyatta's face, and she was able to kill. Like she was standing in between them, she killed her target because the barrier was blocking the healing, and I was just like, "Whoa!"
That's
Oh, that's
crazy.
cool. I mean,
Yeah,
I would have
I've seen a
doubted that they did
couple.
on purpose in there.
Yeah, that speaks to one play that I saw. I don't remember if it was Overwatch League or a streamer, but somebody was playing Zenyatta, and they used the Zenyatta's Transcendence the second they heard a high noon because they knew where he was, and then went in front of the high noon and stood there with the big 16,000 arms of Transcendence and just blocked all of the damage, and he didn't get any value. I was like, I have never seen that before, and that was the craziest play I've ever seen.
I think that
yeah,
happened in the league
you
once.
can.
Yeah.
That's definitely a good one. Yeah, you can also do that with Diva Mech. So even if your
Oh
mech is
yeah.
gonna get destroyed, and he destroys your mech with the first shot, the destroyed mech's body takes a few seconds to disappear, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the husk of your mech will block the rest of the shots.
It's super cool. Super cool random use. Facts
Before
more than
before
Zarya than what you bargained for today,
yeah,
guys.
that's a lot of little uses for the shield that I really enjoy because there's a lot of versatility that you can actually squeeze out of that shield that is just not obvious
Mm.
to newer players. Um, Before we keep moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about the merits of both styles because you said the selfish and the selfless style, and not to say that the selfish style is a bad style. It has its merits and it has its time and place to do. What would you say would be the merits of one or the other?
Yeah. So the selfish style, while it is not my preferred style, I cannot argue with the results of people that have really mastered it, right? You see the top Zarya players, Spree, Harblue, Spree on his alt account, Erps, you see plenty of Overwatch League Zaryas. They play a very energy-centric style, and they're way higher rated than I've ever been. They're obviously playing professionally, so I can't argue with the results of that style. I kind of think they have reached, kind of epiphany with that style that has not yet occurred to me, and they have figured out how to do it, better than other Zarya players, and it works for them. But so so
Also,
you
it
really
it
oh
tends
sorry,
to.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quick in here. It tends to work really well in the solo ladder specifically. I think that you don't see the style come out very often. For example, in the Overwatch League, you never see like a Zarya just carrying the entire team and like they're all just boosting the Zarya and that's it. Usually you just see a selfless style on the league, but on the ladder, especially on the solo queue ladder, I think that this style definitely has a lot more room in there.
I'm actually going to disagree with you there. So I
Interesting.
do a lot of Overwatch like Zarya analysis. Whenever they play Zarya, people in my Discord can say, "Hey, check out this game," and talk about the Zarya. And most of the Zarya Overwatch League Zaryas I've seen, they still play the very selfish style, even at the top tier level of team play. And on one hand, your team can be prepared for that, right? Like the Houston Outlaws. There was a couple maps, and I can't remember which stage Kings Row was in the pool, but Spree is like, I'm going to play this style. You guys are going to support me, and he just kind of took over the game. And now at the same time, there are also Houston Outlaws games on Kings Row where Spree attempts that style, and either
Gets shut
I
down.
can't say if like his team wasn't able to support him or if the enemy team was able to punish, or it didn't work so well.
Hmm.
So it really can go both ways. So in terms of it working better on the ladder, I like to kind of break it down into Zarya player will find themselves in two kind of situations. You either have a competent team or an incompetent team. So let's look at the selfish style through this lens, right? If you have a competent team, then it's probably the best time to play the selfish style because your team doesn't really need your support. You can kind of just do your own thing, be your own carry in that type of match. That's probably, in my opinion, where it thrives. Which you see a lot of competent teams at a very high level. So maybe that's part of it. I've actually never thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on the other hand, when you're playing with an incompetent team and you're playing the selfish style, you'll be who knows how much energy you'll be getting. Like in theory, your team will just be taking a bunch of damage from everywhere because they're incompetent, and you'll have energy, but your whole team will be dead, and you'll be left there 1v6 with 100 charge, and maybe you grab like, all right, you have a 6-person grab, 100 charge, full HP, but there's no one around, and so when you look at these situations through the lens of the selfless style, if you have a competent team, you can enable them to continue to be extremely competent, right? If you've got a person making insane plays, but maybe someone on the other team finally like figures them out, boom, Zarya shield comes through and you still are enabling them to do what they want to do. And at the same time, like you're still getting energy as Zarya. I want to
Right.
be very clear, and this is a common misconception when I first kind of like made this this playstyle video is even though you will have a higher average energy as Zarya, I'm sorry, average energy as the selfish style, you'll be having more gravitons in theory. That doesn't mean selfless Zarya players are lacking energy. Maybe you don't have, maybe you're not sitting at 80 charge every single second of a game, but you'll be high charge, in my opinion, when it matters, right? In those
Mm-hmm.
team fights. And so to finish up my example, right, when you have an incompetent team and you're playing the selfless style, right, you were saying, the best Zaryas, are ones that can like shut down a Roadhog, right? And a bunch of incompetent teammates are constantly getting hooked by Roadhog, they're out of position where they shouldn't be. And that's where the selfless Zarya really shines, right? When you have that teammate that just has no idea what they're doing and they know what they're doing is wrong after they're at the dying screen, you can help them. Maybe they'll get out of that situation, and then you can just abuse that honestly and just keep getting energy.
No,
You'll have
that
one extra teammate.
I'm loving this idea because honestly, I was thinking about it completely the opposite way, right? Like when you were talking about the selfless style and the selfish, I was like, well, if your team is gonna be incompetent, maybe you just want to take the reins and try to carry, go super selfish, get a lot of energy. But you're actually seeing it the completely opposite way. You're seeing it, well, if my team is being a little more incompetent and I don't have as much faith in them, I should play more of a babysitter role and make sure that they're okay. And just by helping them, we'll have better chances. Now, if my team is awesome and they're all playing fantastic, that means that they probably need my shields less, and therefore I can play more selfishly and be more aggressive on my own, be more selfish with my energy, and try to play that high charge area. Am I getting it right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would say one thing that kind of makes note is Zarya's ultimate, right? Graviton Surge. That is rarely an ultimate Zarya can kind of utilize by itself. It happens, it occurs, but more often than not, you see that ultimate being used in conjunction with a teammate. And I think that's a
Yeah.
great example of it. Just in her ultimate, the best way to use it is in a selfless way. You don't really see a lot of selfish gravitons, right? You see them and maybe, they don't work out because they like grabbed 1v4 or whatever.
They
But
rarely work out.
just
There's a reason why, like you said, it
right,
always gets
exactly.
paired
It's
up.
it's part of her core to play with her team, in my opinion.
Absolutely. No, I really like this discussion. Actually, it's making me see Zarya in a different way.
So I know that we've talked a lot about using the positioning around the barriers and that being pretty core. But something that I was learning early on is that a Zarya that doesn't get their ultimate isn't really playing correctly. And what that means is that Zarya's ultimate is one of the hardest ones to get really quickly if you don't know how to get it. And the reason is it charges ridiculously slow if you're not landing shots, from what I've found. Do you want to talk about how you can build ult faster, or kind of like the couple things that you want to be practicing in order to start getting those ultimates?
Yeah, so Zarya's Graviton, like you said, is very slow to charge. And the main thing that stems from, slow ultimate charge, besides the enemy team absolutely stopping you, is usually target selection. So Zarya is a non-mobile hero. She has no movement abilities. You could not people that arguing her grenade is a movement ability, get out. That's not a movement ability. She can barely move around with that little thing. Um, but based on how, kind of team formations work, like we talked about, right? It's the main tank, then Zarya, then like the rest of your team. Zarya is thrives, or she does a lot of damage and gets a lot of alt charge when she is focusing the enemy tanks, right? A charged Zarya does like a ridiculous amount of damage. I think it's like
Yeah,
over
it's insane.
150 damage per second or something. It's probably more than that. Someone can check the wiki. Um, and so when you're doing that much damage and you're non-mobile, like what's easier to hit, right? A tracer or a roadhog, right? And you're like the roadhog will there's a reason he's called an alt battery. You can just shoot him over and over and over because he needs to be playing on that enemy front line, and you can just farm so much ultimate off of him. And I talked about this a lot in my Graviton guide. Was those like pesky flankers, that Pharah in the sky, they're not really Zarya's responsibility. Her target selection is, in my opinion, tanks first. And if there is a high priority squishy enemy, presenting themselves to you out of position, then of course, transition to that target. I think a good example was like, you and your Ryan are fighting their Ryan and their Zarya, and their Mercy like makes a mistake and she Guardian Angels past the Reinhardt. That kind of happens. People are kind of mess up with Guardian Angel. When that happens, yeah, don't keep shooting Reinhardt in that case. Shoot the Mercy, of course. But for the most part, your first targets are going to be those enemy tanks because you melt barriers, you melt their HP pools, and if you can consistently do this and position well near your main tank, you should be seeing yourself getting more alt charge.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the primary and secondary fire. How do you choose when to use in between these two? Obviously, one is very short range, like short to medium range. The other one is a little bit more long range and more. One is single target. The other one is more like area of effect damage. Let's talk about how you use them.
Yeah, so the enemy tanks, they have very large hitboxes. They're not, some of them aren't as mobile, so they're really, really good as beam targets, laser targets, right? Especially like Reinhardt, he's not going anywhere unless he charges. Like, and
Right.
if you can't hit Reinhardt with your laser beam, then you've got other problems. Um, now, now it does do the most damage. So if your tracking is insane, by all means, you can definitely be beam heavy. And I talk about this a lot. I call it beam grenade discipline. So grenade usage, the grenade has a lot of uses. It can position Zarya. It does AoE damage, like you said. But the main thing is its knockback. The main kind of utility of it is its knockback. So when you as Zarya are fighting enemy heroes that rely heavily on aim, you can fire a grenade at their feet and it will knock them into the air. And this accomplishes three things. One, it makes them easier to track with your beam because they're moving in a predictable arc. So you can grenade, track them with beam, and then grenade again when they land. That is actually point three. And then two is it disrupts their aim. So
It's
when you're
very
fighting like a
disruptive.
McCree, you can just shoot him, and now he's trying to like, okay, I have to adjust, horizontally downwards because she knocked me up. And at the same time as Zarya, you're just like just dishing out so much damage because he's just little 200 HP McCree. And the other thing is, it's a super useful as a to secure kills. A full 100 charge grenade does 95 damage. That is no joke. That's almost 50% of like half the cast. It just gone in like one click. You can
Mm-hmm.
also, for anyone that doesn't know, you can grenade with one ammo in Zarya's magazine. You don't need 25.
It
Just
still
a
spends
quick
it.
tip
Yeah.
there. So if you're fighting a tank right with your laser and they're about to die, you can laser them down. It's up to you. But even if you chose to grenade them at that point, like no one's gonna fault you for that. It's a great way to secure kills, no matter who you're fighting.
So, a quick
Absolutely.
question on this is that if you're at a certain level on the beam, do you have like a good rule of thumb for charge rate for when you would stop hitting the barrier with the alternate fire of the explosive rounds and switch to beam? Because I know that there's sometimes when I think I kind of use 50 as like my 40 to 50 is kind of my switch off point. If I'm within range, at least, I would much prefer to use the beam on a barrier to break it or on a tank then I would use the alternate fire unless I'm like really low in the magazine and I try to use that last little clip for the big burst of the bomb.
So in terms of damage per second to shields, I believe zero charge laser is 95 damage per second, and a zero charge grenade is 45 damage.
That's
So
right.
the first thing is you should always be shooting a shield with your laser beam. This is really, and you can finish off your magazine with a grenade in order to get that extra value, but don't like shoot 4 grenades at a shield, because even if you're full charge, your full charge laser beam will do way more damage than a full charge 4 grenades. Now, if you're obviously really far away, like you can spam barriers from a distance, that'd probably be the main reason to shoot a barrier with a grenade if you're out of beam range. But if you're within beam range, no matter your charge level, even at 0, it's better to use Zarya's laser.
And this beam is not short. Let me tell you guys, like
It's like
it's
20
something that's
meters, isn't it?
it's almost
Yeah,
20.
at
It's
full
16.
charge, yeah.
Oh, I was close.
Yeah, but
Now,
like it's a really crazy thing because there's a lot of really odd things with this beam. Like you won't really expect the Zarya to be able to kill a flare out of the sky, but I've seen it happen more often than not because of how long that beam is.
it can get pretty long, yeah.
And secondly, there's some people that I've been talking to, and also I started noticing when I was playing, but the crosshair and the beam animation on your screen are sometimes like not always aligned. Do you want to speak to that? I don't know if you have anything to say on that one, CANAS1AN. It's kind of a weird.
I think her beam specifically is it's kind
It's
of
just the
has
beam, yeah.
it's kind of the right hand rule like of video games, like back in the day, right? If you were like playing an old school shooter, your gun was on your right hand side, and so the bullet kind of initialized on your right hand side. So if you're Zarya and you like walk right up to a wall like point blank and you start shooting with your beam, you'll see the little laser impacting the wall like to a little bit to the right of the crosshair. I'm pretty sure, and I think that's kind of what you're pointing towards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't noticed
So
that.
it has a really slight thing, and again, it's not like I think for heroes like new Symmetra and Zarya currently, this is a lot less noticeable because you can't headshot with the hero, and so when you're using the beam in and of itself, being relatively close, the hitbox registration typically will fix it, because even if you're aiming a little too far or you're aiming directly on the beam is like, I guess, quote unquote, missing, the beam on the right of the screen is kind of like shooting at an angle, like you were saying, like a very slight angle, and it's still going to register where the crosshairs are. So it just looks weird, but you're still registering your hits, from what I understand.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever seen it like someone like got away because
It
of
was a
this.
little to
Like,
the right.
I would call it more of like a visual bug, if anything. I don't
Yeah.
really think it
Yeah.
affects gameplay at all.
Sometimes the animations in Overwatch are not entirely representative of the skill. Like it happens with McCree's flashbang on the animation. You see it come out of the left-hand side because that is the hand that he throws it with. But in reality, the grenade comes out from the center of the model. But the animation, you just see it from the left-hand side. So I don't know if it's maybe
Right.
like something like that in this case. I wanted to speak a
I
little
just-
bit
Yeah, go ahead.
to the
Go ahead.
abilities themselves, though, to the primary and the secondary fire, because I really feel like this is where you can explore the hero a little bit more on the mechanical side. Like this is where you can shine on your mechanics and you can really drill down some practices to keep your beam very steady, to be able to track the enemy hero, to be able to get a sense for the lobbing of your grenades so you can fire at any distance with confidence. Do you practice any of these things, or have you just played the hero so much that they've kind of like become natural in your gameplay?
Fun fact is Zarya's grenade and Zarya's ultimate projectile, the Graviton Surge, have the same projectile arc. So
Oh,
if you, for
cool.
some reason, want to go for some crazy long-range Graviton, you can just like test that out with a grenade and be like, okay, that worked, and then
And the
just like,
speed.
fire.
I didn't know that, but that
Everything
is
about the
awesome to
projectiles
know.
is the same, except for the AOE, I guess. But
Right.
in terms of training like my aim, honestly, my aim is definitely the weakest part of my gameplay. I hate to be one of those people, but my aim did improve when I upgraded to 144 hertz monitor.
Hmm.
Now don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people with way better aim with like 17 hertz monitors, I'm sure, but it's not everything. It just
17
helped
hertz,
me.
jeez.
It helped me personally. I'm just pulling a number out of my toque here, but um,
Yeah,
in
60
terms of
is kind of the standard.
yeah, I think yeah, pretty much yeah. I did do when I a little bit when I was kind of one season, I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at everything else in Zarya. I'm just gonna practice on my aim. I just kind of, did what anyone does and just like started a bot game where they can't damage you and kind of mess with their movement speed and just like did that for like 20, 30 minutes like every other day to just like really focus in. But I mostly was able to climb through my barrier usage and like communication and ultimate tracking were kind of my three
Hmm.
pillars to climbing as Zarya.
She
Sorry, I shouldn't say as Zarya, as an Overwatch player.
she's a very cool hero in the sense that most of her kit can be very effective as long as you have a good game sense, you have good strategy, good decision making. Because putting the barriers doesn't require you to be incredibly mechanically intensive. It's actually fairly easy to look at the general direction of a teammate and put in the barrier. The hard part about it is choosing when to place that barrier, having the right timing, and choosing the right targets, which is more geared towards your strategic side. But yeah, I will say just that primary and secondary fire. That's probably like the one very mechanical part of the hero. You see some Zarya sometimes throwing some lob grenades into some really weird angles and getting the shots and just being a nuisance all over the place, or being able to
Mm.
track down even the squishy heroes really well, which you melt them down really fast
Mm-hmm.
when you're high
Now,
charge.
there's something about Zarya that I started doing recently that actually really improved a lot, and it was just like a really subtle like, why aren't you doing this? I was playing, I think, on game night, and then ended up pairing up with a higher tier, like than a couple diamond games with somebody, and they were telling me, they're like, well, if you're gonna play Zarya and you're around, even if you're like missing shots, just like, if whenever possible, try to be shooting something, and that's what gets you your ult charge. And so like, even if you're just lobbing grenades and you're trying to hit them, that's better than like not shooting and like trying to hide. Like with the tank, and especially with how powerful Graviton is, you just want to be always building it. And so he said, if you're not barriering somebody, you need to be shooting, and just like keep lobbing grenades. He's like, just keep spamming your right click and reloading if you're not in range, or keep beaming stuff down. Just do whatever you can to deal damage, and hitting those shots will come eventually, because the more times that you shoot, the more times that you start tracking with the beam, the more accurate you will get, just from virtue of practicing, right? That's how practice works. You
Yeah,
start
that's
learning to
actually
hit more shots.
a great point. So I talk a lot about at reload discipline. I'm gonna kind of kind of tie in here.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
so many people will reload anytime they like shield something, anytime they like switch targets, etc. So there are good times to reload and bad times to reload, just like with any hero. And the good times to reload are pretty much when you're not fighting anything and there's not an opportunity to fight anything, or you're right about to grab. Those are really the ideal times to reload. But when you're like in a fight, and let's say you like just killed Roadhog and you got 40 ammo left, some like plenty of players will reload in that moment, even though like based on the situation, like maybe not on their screen there isn't anyone, but they it just as a player, like, okay, just slightly to my left or slightly to my right there is an enemy. Like if that's the case, like Zarya's reload's not short. It's 1.5 seconds. It's not the longest in the world, but it's not short either. And being a non-mobile hero, that's 1.5 seconds of you're not doing anything. People will just obliterate you in that point. And a lot of times I see a really bad reload. Some players have had just like a whole game of just terrible reloads. And you can pinpoint the exact moment when they wish they hadn't reloaded so much. So the example I like to give, like you were saying, whenever you're reloading, you're not building your graviton surge. And so many times you in these when I do VOD reviews and you see a player that reloads too much, they will die at like 97% of their ultimate. And I will just pause the video and be like, I bet you didn't reload as much now, don't you? And like the game ends and they lose. Like everyone has lost a game when they are like this close to their ultimate. And if you for some reason recorded that game and you watch it back, I guarantee you can find at least 5 times where you should not have reloaded on any hero. This is not Zarya specific.
I was
Yeah.
about to
Um,
say, I was like, this is something that isn't just Zarya centric. This is pretty much
right.
any hero that regularly fires
Right.
anything.
I would say
Yeah.
Ana is really the main one you kind of want to would reload all the time. So at
Yeah,
any given situation, you'd
you
have
build bad
full
habits with Ana,
healing.
I
Yeah,
found.
but besides that, like even Zenyatta, right? Zenyatta, you can build Transcendence, just throw out the volley. Orisa's another one, like I do Orisa VOD reviews. Her magazine is just ridiculously large, and her reload is the longest in the game at 2.5 seconds. I know this is not
Jeez.
Zarya related, but that is another big problem with Orisa players. Just throwing that out there.
I mean, for every hero, this is true though. Like even Widowmaker, if you have Widowmaker that's reloading too much, you're giving way too much space to the other Widowmaker to be able to get a shot on you, or maybe you can't take care of the opportunity that presents yourself because you were reloading at the time. This is one of those disciplines that I've been trying to teach myself a little more because I'm one of those people that tends to reload more than they should. And honestly, if you're in the middle of the fight, like you said, you might as well just use the entirety of the magazine and then auto
You
reload
have to.
with your
Yeah.
like if you're gonna reload, you might as well just use all of the bullets and then you'll have to reload no matter what.
I think the most realistic example is, you've just finished off an enemy and you've got 40 ammo, and you see another enemy, but they instantly started hitting reload after their first enemy died, but the second enemy didn't see them. But by the time they finish reloading, that enemy has now acquired them
Right.
as a target.
It's all
So
about
even though you
precious time.
Right. So even though you're going into that fight with full ammo, you're going into that fight with now like on even terms instead of you had a chance there to dish out, damage that you were not going to receive back because they were distracted by whatever's happening.
That's a good
I
little
think that it's
general
even
tip.
more so with Zarya. Reloading is really obvious because of how you can maximize that last little inch of your clip, right? Like if you got 48 in the barrel, you can shoot 2 rounds of your alternate fire. But if you're like just killing something and you whip around, you can spend like less than 1.5 seconds finding and acquiring a target. You can just like beam them down best you can and then use your right click at the last like 2 of your clip, and then you get a huge burst of damage. You can kill a lot of stuff that way, especially if your charge is even in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, her damage is no joke, right? I think the
Right.
specifics of her energy is every point of energy you have is a direct percent increase in damage. So at
Yep.
100 charge, you're doing 100 extra damage.
There you go. There you have it.
100% extra damage, excuse me, not 100 extra
100.
damage.
It's a percentile
100%,
change. Yeah, that's right.
100% damage.
So if you're at
There
50, your 45 round hits are doing another 22 damage. So it's what is it, 67
60
per
something
round is
something.
about
Yeah.
50, somewhere around there. So that's a lot of damage,
yeah, it's a
dog.
lot.
And that's even more with the beam, because the beam itself, like, so it'll do 95 damage a second. So if you're tracking something for a full second, it does 95 damage. So you're doing almost 150 damage at 50 charge. That's redonkulous.
That's
Yeah,
a
it's
tracer
no
in 1
joke.
second.
That's her DPS element like in her kit is her energy.
Absolutely.
Yep.
There's 2 more things that I want to talk about, Zarya, real quick before we close out the show. One of them being Graviton. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about it, but best usages, maybe some tips on how to use it without whiffing it or without it getting eaten by a diva matrix, for example. And then after that, I wanted to talk a little bit about Zarya's place in the meta right now because she has really come back with a passion. She's almost in every game. A lot of heroes that are getting played right now can benefit from Zarya. So just wanted to touch on those 2 little topics before we run out of time too quick.
Yeah, so Graviton, best uses. So the best use is, commonly referred to as the Wombo combo, right? You and a teammate, typically a DPS, you guys have come together in this beautiful moment for them to steal your play of the game when you grab the whole enemy team, right? What are the tried and true classics? Tracer Bomb, Farah Barrage, Hanzo Arrow, very popular right now. So that's kind of the most common use, probably one of the best uses because you can kind of win a team fight with minimal resources invested. Now, to touch on that, Zenyatta is a huge kind of pain to a Graviton, and depending on who your combo ally is, you can abuse the fact that Zenyatta is going to be very itchy with his Transcendence when you have Graviton.
Yeah,
So
very greedy.
right. I was talking with Rob before the show. A kind of not as common wombo combo you see, but you do see here and there is like Graviton and Dragon Blade, right? Zarya and Genji. And even in Overwatch League, if you have Zarya Genji versus Zenyatta, don't invest both of those into what you know is not going to yield any results because Dragon Blade is only like 120, 125 a swing. All right, you can use one to bait out Transcendence and then clean up the fight with the other. And I would recommend use the Graviton first to bait out the Transcendence, then they're all grouped up for the following Dragon Blade. And this applies to multiple ultimates, right? This applies even to a Pharah. Maybe not so much a Hanzo because Hanzo Dragon is kind of rough by itself, but
Yeah.
when you have those DPS combos, just consider ultimate tracking, right? Very important. Consider what the enemy team, how they are going to respond to your grab. Like you can even like shattering Reinhardt's, they love to shatter when they're stuck in a grab, and you can abuse that by saving your personal shield, walking into his face, being like, "I dare you to shatter right now. I have a personal shield," and I've definitely abused that fact and be like, "Hey, I got a shatter out too. Well, we won this team fight." Um,
Especially since you can block it for your team if you're close enough, like you were
right,
saying
exactly,
earlier.
and he is stuck in that little ball.
Mm-hmm.
So other uses for Graviton, and again, I talked about this extensively in my Graviton guide video, was you can use it to kind of trap an enemy that you are very afraid of. You know, Beyblade Reaper was a very common one. People would kind of Graviton to kind of waste the duration of Nano Boost. You can do that to a Genji if he's Nano Bladed. You know, be careful because obviously Genji's got Reflect. So any sort of thing like that, you know, if you are afraid of, if there's a huge impact happening by an enemy hero and you can kind of tell like, okay, if I Graviton here, you know, maybe not everyone's going to die, but it will save my team, you know, that can be worth it given the correct situation.
Do
And
you
the
want to
other
talk
one is,
a
oh,
little
sorry,
bit
go ahead.
about? Sorry, I was going to see if I could interject a little bit because sometimes I think people are trying so hard to get the max value. They're trying to get the 4-player, the 3-man, the 6-man grabs. And like you were saying with saving people, I think there's another side of getting an offensive grab where you're actually trying to engage and kill things as a team, but the enemy team's not really presenting themselves in such a way that you can get value out of that, and making sure that you can make a fight flip is kind of like, I guess, the mentality I was really going for. Like knowing when it's time to use it is sometimes is more valuable than like really like saving and working on it, because I know there's two sides of bad Zarya play that are the most aggravating to me personally. One is you have less than a 10-second window from the time your Zarya hits the ult like max and is like, I got it. They hit the Z key and in 10 seconds they're going to use the grab and it's gone. And then the other side is the really good Zaryas get a grab and they sit on it until it's 100% and then they blow it because they already lost or they never got an opportunity to use it in their own mind, right? So I wanted you to see if you could speak to kind of like getting value out of it and making sure that it's at the right time.
Yeah, so with Graviton, you know, with any ultimate really, you want your ultimate to win you a team fight in Overwatch. And as Zarya, there's a couple ways you can do this. So if you're fighting a team that's really good, right, they're not grouping up, etc., at some point there will be at least two people together. And to win a team fight in Overwatch, not traditionally, typically you need about a two-person advantage to win a team fight. And really, that's Zarya. That's all you need. Anything bonus, anything extra is just kind of play the game material. But if you can kill two enemies cleanly with a Graviton, you know, you should not really have too much of a problem winning the rest of that fight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way I think about this is, you know, you have the front line and you have the back line. The back line supports the front line, and the front line supports or protects the back line. So as Zarya, if you think your team has the resources to kill the enemy front line, right, the two tanks, you know, it's right now very common. It's like Reinhardt and Zarya. You can just straight up grab those two. Your team can like dump, you know, just dump damage into those two. You'll win the fight. And what's the backline going to do now? They have no shields, no protection. You
Right.
can just, you know, slow and steady march forward and win the fight. And on the other hand of that, you can try and go for like a flank or try and, you know, grenade jump off of something and grab the back line. And even if you catch, you know, both DPS, both healers, or one of each, right? It should A, be very easy to kill them because their HP pools are really small, and B, that means you don't need as much follow up, and C, you know, if you whoever you kill, whatever combination, you know, the enemy team's now missing damage or healing, which should then make it easier for you to kill the enemy front line.
Yeah, don't be too stingy with the grabs. Sometimes I see too many Zaryas holding onto their grabs for like 2 or 3 fights, and it's like you might as well just try to get value
Just
out of
use
it
it.
in the fight that you're in, and then try to get the next grab out of there as quick as possible. You don't want to hold on to that same ultimate too long in the battle. Something we've always said here in the lab.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely like a balance because it's not about, you know, having a ton of grabs is good, but in my opinion, it's quality over quantity, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a video I saw recently where, a very skilled Zarya player, they had 14 gravitons, but then when you watch that video, like so many of their gravitons, in my opinion, were pretty low value.
Low
They
impact.
just kind of had a ton of them. Now, holding them for a bunch of fights and then you lose the round, obviously that's not ideal, but it's really hard to tell without the situation, right? If they're just really snowballing you, like at some point, yeah, you can grab and and it's just kind of you versus the world, and maybe there just never was a good point to grab. Like if your DPS are like swapping heroes, you never have an allied ultimate to combo with, and that can make it really hard to kind of clean it up. Now, like I said, if you are decently charged, you can almost kill 2 enemy squishies with your grab by yourself. It is just very situational, and you'd really have to work in overtime to make a solo grab happen.
Absolutely. Rule of thumb, make sure you have something to follow it up with, either teammates or you are incredibly high charge and you believe that you can survive grabbing them, by yourself or without anyone in close proximity. Grab also has a couple other uses too. You don't only have to grab him to kill him. Sometimes you can use the grab for different things like denying an area. We talked about it on our last episode about ultimate management and alternative uses for some ultimates. You can use it to zone people out of a place, make them get caught in the choke point so they can't advance to the point. Sometimes you can, like we said last time, you can use it on the side of an abyss to grab the team, and when the graviton stops, the enemy team drops. I've used it creatively the other day. I was actually kind of proud of this one, even though it didn't end up working out. I liked the play in itself. It was Horizon Lunar Colony, and from the attacker's perspective, they were coming in from the left side, and the Zarya just threw her graviton through that middle hole where you can kind of have the sight line into the point, and they were going across the left side. So for a second, they didn't have sightline of the graviton, and I graviton on them on that choke. So they were basically on the other side of the wall. So it was like both teams were graviton, but there was a wall in between them. So I literally only used the graviton so they couldn't get to my team. Unfortunately, they still had a Hanzo that used his ultimate and destroyed my team. But still, I thought it was a creative use of the grab, and it could have worked if we had like Zenyatta ultimate, for example.
Yeah, that is definitely a creative use for sure. Not, I don't think I've ever seen that actually. That's definitely a good idea.
I was proud of that one, I will say.
So you were talking about like zoning. One way that people have won games, myself included, is if you somehow like make it onto the point, or actually let's say you're defending, it's probably a more likely scenario. You're defending and there's like 5 seconds left and you have grab, you can grab them so they can't even touch, and then you'll win the match. I've won a few games like that, and that was always like really fun. Like you feel kind of bad, but at the same time you're like really proud.
It's the same thing with using like a boop ability to just space them off the point. I've seen Faraz do it, Lucia's do it, Winston ults do it.
When you don't have
like,
to
pretty
win
much anybody has
the battle
something
to win the
similar.
Yeah,
match.
movement, displacement, yeah.
Displacement, yeah. Now the cool thing about this that maybe a lot of you players like myself that are in the plat, gold, bronze, silver range may not be aware of is when you shoot the grab, a lot of times you see gravitons hit the ground and then suck people into them. There is a very slight, there's two things I want to highlight here. There's one thing is that the graviton actually does AoE damage. It's not a lot, but it does do a little bit of tick damage. And it's
like,
really funny when that actually finishes
I think it's
people
like
off.
50 or something. I think it's 33 actually.
It is 5.5 damage per second. It is
Okay,
nothing.
so yeah, it's like
It
really,
is less than a
really
wet
small.
noodle.
It's just to show
but
you that it's a black hole,
It's like killing somebody with an Ana dart, because the Ana dart does 5 damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anyways, it's really, really funny if you can do it, and it's kind of a really interesting thing to do BM in game nights. So
I don't recommend
out.
anyone secure kills. with Graviton.
yeah, definitely don't recommend it. The second thing is that Graviton Surge has what's called a attachment, kind of a coating. It is a projectile, and when it lands, whatever like inanimate surface it lands on, it will stick to. So this means that if you shoot it into a wall, it will stay where it hits the wall. It'll also do the same thing with ceilings. And so, like Andres talked about interesting uses and used Horizon as an example, I'll say if you're on point B of Horizon, a lot of people, if you're on the defending side, they have that upper area the little catwalk that's an L shaped, and if you're on offense, it's on the right side. If you're on defense, it's on the left side. I've seen Zaryas try to pull people out of the choke by shooting it into the bottom of that L bracket and pulls them forward out of that area, and then people shooting dragons almost at like upper angles. So even when you're trying to escape the grav, the dragon is like kitty corner and hitting like multiple areas of the graviton, plus where you want to back up or leave. And so it's really interesting placement that you can do. I've also seen people use this on Lijiang Tower in the gardens, where you're outside and they shoot it into the side of the wall, and people are trying to cross the bridge, and even though they can't even see the grav, it yanks them to the wall, and then when the graviton expires, they fall to their death. So you can see all kinds of crazy uses of the graviton surge. And CANAS1AN, if you have any other specific examples of maybe like interesting placements for where you want to put the grav, also maybe like a quick tip on how to avoid D.Va like eating it. There's also another key thing.
So one of my favorite places to grab is Temple of Anubis Point 2, that mega health pack underneath that bridge. If you, as Zarya, if you're standing on that health pack and you're facing the defender spawn, you can shove the grav in that corner where the bridge meets the wall, and it basically sucks everyone on the whole point. So
underneath the point?
Right, underneath the point, right.
Sick.
That one's super fun. I like doing that one. But just while we're on the topic of Temple of Anubis, there is a better one that I like more. On the left-hand side, you can grenade jump on top of that half wall and then shoot the grav into their backline. That one's really
I've done that.
That one's
That's
really
good.
fun. Yeah,
it's really fun to do that with a Pharah, because they'll just jump up with you at the same time.
right, because exactly, with the little boosters. In terms of not getting your grav absorbed or reflected, because Genji is a threat here too. So the main thing you want, obviously, every Zarya player wants, is D.Va not to be in mech. Now that can't always be the case, but that's what you hope for. Now if you can't manage that, visually keep track of her defense matrix usage. And I'm not saying wait for her to drain her meter, but there is a built-in 1 second cooldown in D.Va's defense matrix. Like she cannot like flick it on and off like really quickly. Like she has to turn it on, and when she turns it off, it's 1 second until she can turn it on again. So as Zarya, if you are tracking that, you see her use it, and if you can shoot your grav in such a way that it will not have 1 second of travel time, just go for it, right? Even though she'll be defense matrixing in the grav, it's gonna run out, and your team will still have plenty of damage to dump into the grav. Now Genji's a little different. You may basically just have to ask your whole team, someone please pay attention when Genji uses reflect. I'm begging you. I don't want to be on Reddit. Don't let him kill all 6 of us by reflecting that grav, and just gotta really, really, really pay attention. You don't even have to see Genji, right? It's a pretty loud noise. It's a pretty like shink. It's like pretty noticeable like sound. So if you hear that, I think it lasts like 4 seconds. You can just either keep track of his positioning or his reflect cooldown. Right? If he just like dashed away to a health pack, of course you can grab. He's not there. But if you don't know where he is, don't risk it. You don't want to be on Reddit for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And I've seen some higher level play of Genji's
2 second duration,
or
by
people
the way.
swapping to Genji specifically to counter the Zarya. And sometimes the Genjis will lay traps. Like they'll be like in the ceiling, and they'll just wait for the Zarya to start approaching the middle lane when you can tell they kind of want to grab. And they'll just jump from nowhere, deflecting.
Just pop in like Nightcrawler from the X-Men and be like, reflect!
And the Zarya will just shoot the grab. It's
like,
oh
really
no!
bad. You're like, oh no. So like, lhitting tab, or sorry, looking at the scoreboard to like keep track of that hero switch, also an important skill. I've definitely been in games where like someone like the main tank will like switch to D.Va. Like this is our last hope. I'm just gonna Hail Mary try and like eat this grab.
Yeah.
Also, you can use your beam. Deflect does not block beam. D.Va Matrix cannot eat the beam because it's not a projectile. So if you shoot it and you hold it and they're holding Matrix, then they're burning. You're burning an ability and you're killing them simultaneously. And you don't need a whole lot of damage or charge to do that.
Yeah, because they can't fight back. So
it also absolutely rips through armor, I must say. Because of how armor is factored, it does half of the total damage, and it caps off at 5. And if you're doing like a bazillion damage with a high charge Zarya, that's gonna do like nothing to mitigate beam damage. It's a lot of damage.
Yeah, it is a lot of damage.
True. Alrighty. Is there anything else you want to add here on Zarya, because we're running a little bit out of time? But is there any other tips or little things you've discovered around the hero that we didn't get a chance to cover?
I'll just rapid fire real quick talk about why she's being more prominent in the meta right now. So
Cool.
Hanzo got a change. So he went from being kind of burst DPS to sustained DPS, and so Hanzo's been picked more because he's more reliable DPS. And then because Zarya Hanzo combo so well, Zarya is now a more prominent off tank. Now the other main thing is Brigitte being added into the mix, like single-handedly, in my opinion. Like no one's been playing dive. Like nothing really happened to those other heroes like majorly. It's Brigitte being introduced into comp. She shuts down Diva. She shuts down Winston really hard. Tracer, Genji, all four of the main dive heroes, Brigitte is like very good against. And Zarya is very bad against. Well, she's technically good against Diva, but she's really bad against the rest of them.
Her
So with
mobility is
Brigitte,
what hinders him a lot against those heroes. Not
right,
being able to keep
because
up.
the dive team can go wherever they want, and Zarya's like, hang on, guys, catching up here.
I'm coming. I'm just
I'm a
walking.
weightlifter, not a sprinter. I'm doing my best. And also dive comp is just really good versus Zarya because even though technically like you can bubble someone, whoever they target, their damage is so small, it just ramps up, right? Genji and Tracer, Winston, and Diva are all pretty much sustained DPS heroes, and Zarya barriers are great versus burst damage.
Right.
So I mean, technically up close, Tracer and Diva are burst damage, but really, like, they can also stop shooting at the drop of a dime, which is not good for Zarya. So dive has always been really bad for Zarya. So now that Brigitte has been introduced in the mix, on top of Brigitte gives, like, crazy amounts of armor, which is really good for Zarya based on how armor, shield, health, and regular HP work. And Brigitte has what's basically a like quote unquote projected barrier with her repair pack. Like they can just be on the front line and just be the best battle buddies you've ever seen, even better than Zarya and Reinhardt, because Brigitte can actually heal Zarya and Zarya can protect Brigitte, and they just like this relationship is like so symbiotic, it's insane.
Right.
So for you guys out there that are anime fans, I know this is kind of a really cheesy example, but if you've ever watched Full Metal Alchemist, Alphonse and Edward Elric is kind of like Alphonse is the Zarya, and that's really big and beefy, and Edward is kind of the enabler, well, like with Brigitte. They do amazing things together, but kind of like when you have one without the other, it's still good. It's just not as good.
And
They
like
also have similar ranges. Similar engagement ranges, Brigitte and Zarya. Like neither one is really going that much farther than the other. Like Reinhardt, his engagement range is like 4 meters, and Zarya's like, well, I'm back here. But with Brigitte, you're
Yeah.
kind of both like at the same, level on the battlefield.
And you like standing in like similar places because both of you play that babysitter kind of role. And Brigitte likes being in the middle, so her heal can get the most people, and she can defend the back line, the front line, kind of like the same. And like you said, Zarya synergizes with a lot of the heroes that are being played right now. Like Reinhardt, for example. Reinhardt and Zarya are a really nice tank duo. The shields really help Reinhardt a lot get aggressive, or if he gets out of position or gets cut out, surrounded by the enemy team, Zarya can give him that little bit of breath to maybe get away. And a lot of the DPS is like you said, I love those ultimates like the Pharah ult, the Hanzo ult. Those are amazing ultimates, but they require some sort of setup from your enemy team, and Zarya brings it all together. She's like, guys, I got you. I'll pull everyone together. You
She's
guys
the
can do whatever
jelly
you
to
want.
their peanut butter.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, got him. All right, guys. I think that's going to close it out with the jelly and peanut butter. You guys are probably starving for more than just information at this point. So if you're at work, go on your lunch break, come back and enjoy the rest of the show. We have a little bit of updates on the Blue Post, which we're going to have to blast through because, as you know, anytime we actually get a good scheduled interview, Blizzard decides this is time for news. And so we have to cover everything with the Blue Post. And we try to push this at the end of the show for those of you that are listening in future podcast land and go into the backlog where this is not as relevant to your interest. But right now there's a PTR that launched on June 5th, 2018, where they are giving us their first try at the Symmetra rework. And I would like to probably push more of our analysis of this to next week, and Andres is probably gonna give me the thumbs up on that one, but we'll talk a little bit more in depth with this. We've kind of touched on it here and there as they've been feeding us information, kind of the slow drip feed, but we wanted to kind of like actually tell you what it's like now that we can see it and test it and play it later on. But definitely go test it out. I've also attached a link from the official forums with some test videos if you can't actually play it right now, or your computer for some reason doesn't have PTR access and you don't want to download the patch, you can go look it up there. She Also is got a couple other things that has been affected by her, but not necessarily in her, which is the shifting of her category outside of support and into the damage category. That's right, damage category. They've collapsed offense and defense into one super category, and they're moving tanks on the left, supports on the right, and damage in the middle with a big fat bar. And it's really, really nice and pleasing for the UI screen for hero select, and I really, really like it. But moving forward, I think this is going to be the new standard for Overwatch, and it's something really cool that you guys can go check out. I'm going to blast through these if you guys don't have any qualms, and then you can comment at the end. Does it sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, the next thing up that I found was really weird. I hadn't heard anybody talking about this. Combat can now be heard 25% further away. You can actually hear in-game sounds and game effects from firing guns and probably from walking about 25% further away. This is going to help you figure out, using your audio cues, where people are and how to position where they are, and also how to prepare if you're hearing in-game sounds such as ultimate use and or translocators or Reaper teleports or Widow grapples. Like, the little subtle things is going to make a huge difference, and this is something you want to pay attention to. Secondly, Moira got a nerf. Really, really weird, very slight, and it was labeled as a bug fix. So I'll get to that last, but the other things that she has is there's a bug that prevented her biotic grasp, which is her right click on PC or alternate fire to do damage, that actually would not let her deal damage to barriers. So you can deal damage to barriers now, and it will also they also fixed a bug where the beam would disappear when you attach to barrier if you're at a certain angle. And I did notice this on Reinhardt's, especially in Winston barriers. Sometimes your right click or your alternate fire would just disappear if you're trying to damage those. Last up is the bug fix to end all bug fixes. A bug that allowed Moira's biotic grasp to heal targets behind enemy barriers. Apparently this was not as designed, but you can heal people through barriers as per usual. And if the enemy Reinhardt is there or they drop a Winston bubble, you can throw that spray, I don't know, the yellow spray of life through the barriers, but now no longer. So Moira's use is going to be significantly different, and also overall playstyle is going to be a lot different in how you're going to have to position to get heals off. And the overall power level, I think the overall opinions of the community is that she's going to be much less used, which is in a good way, I think, because maybe Anna, we'll get into this a little bit at the end here about kind of like comparing her to Anna maybe next week as well. But I'm really hopeful that Anna's going to get a little bit more use in the comps where you might want to consider using more because of how much utility you get with Ana, but it all depends. This does not affect the bubbles, though, the little biotic orbs. Those can still pass through barriers freely, just so you're aware. Orisa buff. Ultimate cost reduced by 15%, so you're going to get those supercharges about 15% faster. McCree's got a buff. His range on his ultimate, I believe. Yeah, this is ultimate. I didn't write that down, but this is Deadeye's range increased from 70 meters to 200. Honors rejoice.
I don't think this change is gonna matter too much. Honestly,
Deadeye.
There's very few sidelines to non-existent sidelines that are over 70 meters. But I think just in the extremely rare cases where you might see a person over 70 meters, now you will be able to deadeye him too. So just making sure that if McCree sees you,
making sure if you're deadeyeing, you're killing something.
Yeah.
As if McCree needed any more help. Let me guess, right? Like, McCree's not getting a whole lot of play right now, so this little thing over to tune him back up.
I don't think this is like to tune him back up. Honestly, this is just Deadeye doesn't ever feel clunky. Is basically what it seems.
Or Deadeye doesn't feel useless. You know?
Yeah, no one's really going to be like being on the edge of in or out of Deadeye anymore. It's like
Exactly.
You're like, you're so close, just 3 more steps. So
yeah, exactly. And then there's a pretty big, sizable Doomfist change and buff. So he actually has a miscellaneous lot of continual bug fixes that you're going to see with pretty much any PTR and live change. Doomfist hit registration bug list, and it's like 90 pages. Like, basically that's what's going to happen with Doomfist. There's also some bugs with how he could escape Graviton if done a couple things properly. So CANAS1AN, I know you can rejoice about that now that Doomfist is kind of popping up in a lot more games recently. He's not going to escape those Gravitons quite as easy. His passive change.
Combo with him more. Sorry.
Yeah, you can combo with him more. That's right. His passive change for the shield gain, it's called the perfect defense or the best defense, which is offense, of course. The shield change gain. So anytime you hit something with a Doomfist ability or ultimate, the shield that you get is no longer 30, but actually 35 if you register a hit. So that's really cool. If you're chaining abilities, you're going to get, 5, 10, 15. If you're hitting all 3 of your abilities back to back to back, you're actually able to get 15 more additional health. And while it's marginal, it does actually help quite a bit considering the decay rate. The Meteor Strike, the bonus movement speed has been increased from 150 to 200%. So you can move faster with your giant circle of doom.
It only does
Yeah.
300 damage in the center, which is super strange.
Yes. It does more damage in the center, so you can position quicker. Not necessarily the delay from when you decide when you're going to hit and when you land has been changed, but the change is like when you fly up in the air, you can move it around really fast, about 50% faster. Horizon Lunar Colony just got a rework. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when they leaked it onto PTR. You guys can go check that out. It's actually like full swing now on PTR. Career profiles can be privated or privated to friends. This is monumental. We'll probably have you guys comment on this as I've been talking through what the changes are. I'd prefer to have somebody a little bit more informed talk about what the impacts are.
I'll let CANAS1AN talk about this one. Or
yeah,
in general,
for sure.
any notes that attract you here? What grabs your attention?
Yeah, and then we have the new LFG and endorsement system. Endorsements basically means you can kind of get a carrot for somebody doing something such as teamwork or communication, shot calling, stuff like that. And then the LFG system is kind of a role select that's outside of competitive. If you're looking to find a group to go into competitive, you can find people who are just online looking for a group at that moment and what they're going to play. And then you can actually restrict people's access to other heroes with the LFG system. So if I queue up for support, the system can say, look, this team's looking for support. You can join, you can ask the team or look at the team thing, and it'll actually lock you to playing only support. So you can, again, this is a feature that you can turn on and off, and a lot of people were concerned about this in our Discord this week, but we have a little bit of confirmation from a few
this
people
one
that
is
you can
not.
actually disable that.
It's not an on and off feature. It's just literally like a looking for group. You click on
It's
this little
opt-in,
button.
opt-out.
Yeah, as you click
It's
on this little
voluntary.
button next to your player icon, and it pulls out a list of specifications that you can basically
There you
choose
go.
from. You can choose
Right.
what type of teammates you want. Like if you want tanks, how many supports, how many DPS you want. You can specify the level of endorsements too. So if you want players that only have level 3 endorsement or above, you can select that. You can select if other people can invite friends or not. So basically it allows you to form a game with strangers, but with your specific specifications. So if you are a very particular leader and you're like, I want this particular team to be played all the time, you can specify that. Or if you just want to make groups that are laid back and just want to play a bunch of different things, you can still do that. It's basically just a looking for group, and it gives you a filter, so you can filter through people and the games.
Now, CANAS1AN and Andres, feel free to comment on any of the changes, but also if you've played this and used the LFG feature or checked it out, could you comment a little bit more on how the SR range restrictions are in the tooltip?
I haven't played too much with it, but I'll let CANAS1AN speak to some of the patch notes.
I didn't know about the SR restriction. Besides the typical like competitive restrictions, I didn't know the LFG one had it in. Endorsements is actually something I'm very interested in, just because it's kind of like a snapshot of what you can expect from any sort of player. You would imagine that toxic players or people that aren't necessarily very friendly or helpful in a match won't be getting many endorsements. So that's kind of, again, like when you join a match and you see someone with like a full orange circle, okay, that guy's gonna shot call, so maybe I don't have to this game. Or you can have 2 shot callers and come up with strategies. The LFG thing I think is a huge kind of boon for Overwatch. It's something that the game like desperately needed, because maybe this is a myth, but I feel like tank players are just like the smallest number of players, at least until DPS players start playing Zarya. In Overwatch, especially main tanks. Bless anyone that plays main tank for 5 strangers. You deserve a medal, because being a main tank is not hard. You need so much attention from your off tank, your supports. So to to have LFG, to have someone that is opting into that role, like filling, right? There are flex players that have made it work, but really, like when I go into a game, I want to be on my best hero so that we can win this game. And when someone's like on your best hero, that's maybe you can and then see their profile. As we'll talk about that. Maybe it's not their best hero. Like someone locks in your best hero with like a 35% win rate. You're sitting there like kind of upset. You're like, oh man, I like and like already your disposition towards that match is like kind of not in a
Right.
good place. So on top of that, making profiles private, I think is another great change. There's really no downsides. There's some downsides people could argue about, like, oh, now I can't tell who was like a Mercy one trick in top 500 in season 7. Like, but like, who cares? Like, just let them do their thing. But you know, when people that are those flex players, like, okay, my team always needs support, even though my main hero is Zarya. If someone's gonna look at their profile, and be like, hey, why are you playing Zarya? Right? You're a Mercy player. You're an Ana player. Like, get off the hero. Like now you can hide that, and no one will judge you based on your profile, which I think is really important. I think these changes together, the endorsements, the LFG, and the private profile, are going to be kind of like how do I want to put this? Like a reawakening for Overwatch competitor to go from this kind of
Yeah.
terrible place that has, in my experience, obviously I haven't been playing recently because I haven't enjoyed it. It can potentially draw players like myself back in because, like Andres was saying, you can shape your experience with that LFG tool. Like I hate playing with triple DPS as a tank player. I
Right.
hate playing solo tank Zarya when I would never do that. Nobody do that, by the way. If you're the only tank, don't play
Please don't.
Zarya. And that's like that's when I was forced onto Orisa a bunch. Now I like Orisa, but initially I just like hated it. I was like, oh, it's just awful.
Now,
so with all these tools together, it's really
with
changed the game.
with the endorsements tool, I didn't really go into detail what it is, but I just pulled open the PTR so I can read off what this is for you guys. Endorsements recognize players who make positive contributions to the matches. Endorsement have 3 rules. You can give up to 3 per match. You can endorse. You can only endorse 1 player once per match. Okay, so you can't give all 3 of your endorsements to a single player. You can only endorse a player every 12 hours. Wow, that's a lot of confusing rules. Okay, let's go back through these. You can give up to 3 endorsements per match.
Basically, I can summarize it for you. Basically,
Okay.
there's 3 different endorsements you can do. It's a shot caller, it's team player,
Good
and
teammate,
and
and
then
sportsmanship.
and sportsmanship. So basically, each one defines different stuff. Like, are you a good sport? Are you willing to swap heroes whenever you need to? Are you a good team player in the sense that you're constantly helping your teammates, you're doing a lot for the team, you're mercy, and you're constantly vigilant, like you're just generally a good player? Or shot caller, a person that is just generally good at telling your team where you want to move, what's the plan, where you want to go as a team, what plays you want to hold, and just getting everyone on the same page and making the game a lot easier and smoother. You can recognize players for this one. You cannot recognize friends. So basically, all the restrictions that are there are so that people don't abuse the system. You don't want people just farming endorsements, basically. So there's a lot of restrictions, like you can only endorse 1 player. You can only do it every so often. You cannot endorse people that are in your same party. You can endorse the enemy team. Basically, it's just
but
there.
Only with sportsmanship.
Yeah, it's just there to incentivize people to recognize people who are doing a great job, which I think is really awesome, instead of avoid player or ban player, which are all pretty negative in general and tend to highlight the negative players in the community. This one is going to highlight the people who are actually making games enjoyable and who make the game a little better. I like it a lot.
Right. And if I'm looking at this properly, I'm checking the LFG system right now. Let's see here. It's in the game browser. Is that correct? I'm trying to find this.
The interface. No. So if you go
it's
to
underneath.
go to the main menu and then look at your name, and to the left there's like add friend, and then next to like add friend is the LFG
There's the
button.
find group button, and then there's also, if you hit play, there's a find group button underneath quick play, competitive play, arcade, game browser. And then when you do this, you can click. So this guy is a Korean gentleman looking for any queue with endorsement of 1 and has 2 flex spots, 2 healers, 1 tank. And he, I guess, has filled the tank. So it grays out whatever role is filled. And then what kind of queue, whether it be any or quick play, or arcade, or competitive. You can click it and hit join. and then you can select the role that you want, and then it'll also show what roles are currently filled with a check mark and a nameplate, and then you can hit select or leave group.
Basically, how I see it is probably like a hybrid of the custom game creator, where you basically join a
Right.
lobby of a person that has created a game with certain specifications. If you like the specifications, you join a lobby. Once you fill out all the people, you have to manually queue into competitive or quick play or arcade, whatever it is that you're gonna do. And I'm sure that at that point, if you're going to competitive, you have to meet the requirements of competitive. So everyone has to be
Right.
at the appropriate SRs. You know, you can't be over 1,000 or
Right.
below 1,000. If you're
Right.
grandmaster, you have to be within 500. I imagine you have to do this, but it's just an incentive to group up with people. Because honestly, this game needs a little bit more of that. There's been a stigma of grouping up since the beginning of the game. People don't like it. A lot of it has to do with the way the matchmaker has worked in the past. But I think that a lot of improvements have been made. And I personally enjoy this game the most when I'm playing with my friends. When we're playing in the 6 stack, man, this game is super fun. Everyone's on the same page. We can try out different strategies. The game just feels like it's the way it was meant to be played. So I don't know. I like it a lot.
I think
Yeah,
we're going to see a lot more 6-stack play, which is going to be good for competitive mode. You're going to see a lot less
Yeah.
solo queues or duo queues and all that.
Yeah, and to touch on what Andres was saying is, the Overwatch League is in its first season, right? And people watch that, like hundreds of thousands of people watch Overwatch League. Like, this is what Overwatch is supposed to be: coordinated team play. Look at them pulling off these crazy strategies, etc. And then you're like, I want to play Overwatch. You turn off Twitch, you open up Overwatch, then you get into a game and there's a lever. There's someone toxic.
Yeah.
There's someone maybe playing a hero you're not a fan of. Like, it just like watching Overwatch League makes you want to play, but then playing Overwatch made you not want to
It's
play.
a different experience. Yeah.
Right. And so with this system, I didn't know about the endorsement level restriction. That's actually another really important one too. With this system, right, it's like in my head, like if it works like even a fraction of what it could be, like this is game changing. A really like
Lots of
revitalized
potential.
competitive.
I hate to compare it to a game like this, but if you look at games like World of Warcraft, where they have a looking for group system that is automatic and you have to select only like what type of role. And granted, in that one is a little more simplistic because all of the groups are always consist of the same thing. And granted, it's taking them a long time to work in that system, but I feel like it works really well. It groups you up with strangers. It puts each stranger on the role that they're meant to be played, and you can get going really fast. If the group doesn't work out, well, that's just life, but you can make another group really fast.
Yeah.
And I think that that's
I
what this is
also-
going to enable. It's just going to be a tool for people to group up really easily.
I also really like the function of this because you can set this up if like Andres and I are playing together and we pull in a couple friends, maybe CANAS1AN's in our skill bracket because he decayed and we're wanting to play with
Get it
him.
a lot
Sounds
then.
easy.
And we're playing together and it's like, well, we need 3 more. So we just hop in LFG. We've already got 3 of our roles filled. And we're like, this is what we need. And you just go boom, 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 add 3. Doesn't really matter. Let's go play. We have some people that are
This is going to be
coordinated.
great
It's awesome.
at all levels of play, in my opinion.
And for streamers that want to play with other streamers and they're just like, well, we're all this, or even just people wanting to do a community centric event where they're wanting to go play quick play with viewers. This is awesome. It's actually awesome.
Now, I do want to highlight one sort of potential flaw to the system, which is the flex role. There is a little bit of a fear that people that only want to play DPS, they'll queue up as flex. You'll get into a match where you had like 2 DPS, a tank, a flex, and 2 supports, and then now you have 3 DPS all of a sudden. So that is something that
Well, the
I'll be
endorsements
watching
in
closely.
theory should solve that, right? That's the
In
idea.
theory, but
Right.
they'll just
Yeah.
join. They'll just join a queue then that doesn't have an
That allows
endorsement.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Then it also
And that'll be
depends
abused
to.
earlier on, probably.
But then again, it
with the
depends on
endorsements all
the
being one.
leader of the group. If the leader of the group is like, this is not what I want, I'm pretty sure that they can
How
easily
will they
just
know
kick out
though,
that
right?
person.
They'll hide their profile. They'll join up as flex, etc. Like, I don't know. It's something
Yeah,
to
it's not gonna be
to
perfect.
think
It's
about.
still gonna
I don't want it to
rely on
happen,
people.
but yeah,
The
it'll
depravity of
happen, and you'll see
man.
Reddit posts about it, and it'll be a sad time.
Yeah. All right, guys, it's been going long. Let's finish off the show by thanking a few people and let you know where you can find us. Special thanks to our diamond sponsors over at patreon.com/OmnicLab. We have Aiden C, Ben K, Britmus, Christoplaya, Durandal, Ginger Sasquatch, I love saying that guy's name. Sasquatch. Golden Soldier A, Great Root Bear, Jan Jinkle, Jeff D, Lissum, Never Clutch Ray, Roger B, Ricky Tiki Shazir, Terry F, Top Score Solutions, and Tragic Zach. You guys rock, as well as our brand new patrons this week, Hella Norma and Anch P. You guys have some of the most unique names. And I was just looking through our Patreon today, and I was feeling really, really happy because I had to replace my wife's laptop this last week, and it was really, really helpful. Also, I bought a mobile recording unit that Andres recommended, and I got it for $100 cheaper because of Amazon Japan being a boss for once in an eternity for like one item that I want to get, which has been great. And so I'm preparing for BlizzCon as well. So special thanks to you guys for helping make that happen so we can cover those events and work on equipment. I'm not saying that the Patreon stuff is for Carrie, but it definitely helps me focus all of the things on the show so that I can use my actual money to support my family. And that is beyond a blessing that you guys can understand, with swapping between yen and American dollars frequently is a zoo. Also, special thanks to our iTunes reviews. We got one from one of the best spoonerism names that I've not heard of before, Crilly Bistle. A good pun on Billy Crystal. It says, who wouldn't give this show 5 stars? Who wouldn't give your name 5 stars? That's fantastic. Thank you for the iTunes review. If you guys want to support the show and don't really have the coin to do so, you can do that on iTunes by leaving us an iTunes review. We pride ourselves with having good feedback from you guys, whether it be 5 stars or 1 star. We like to take that. And as long as it's critical feedback that is actually relevant to the show and isn't just hating on a host or the particular style of the show, we'd love to hear your feedback there. And also, we're an open book on our Discord at discord.me/OmnicLab. Andres, where can people find you? And then we'll get to CANAS1AN, where people can find his resources.
Yeah, if you want to find me, you can look me up on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
And for Twitter, you can find me at twitter.com/CANAS1AN with a 1. And then my YouTube is, you can either just search CANAS1AN, or if you specifically, you can go youtube.com/user/JWCANAS1AN. Those are my initials. And then finally at twitch.tv/CANAS1AN, where I do VOD reviews very, very frequently. Speaking of which, if you guys want to submit Zarya VODs review, I'm more than happy to do them. Just let me know, and I can set you up with that.
We will work on getting CANAS1AN in our Discord so that he has the honored guest lime green role, so you can see when he's streaming. You can also head over there and find him if you're looking for VOD reviews frequently. Special thanks again, CANAS1AN, for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. Love to have you back again for a map guide in the future. I'm sure that would be something right up your alley.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Andres.
Yeah, absolutely. You were great, man. Thank you so much. See you guys later.
We'll see you guys next week. Remember, if you were looking for any resources, it's on omniclab.com.
I have nothing more to teach you. The rest you must learn for yourself. Walk in harmony, my student.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you guys next week.
Bye.